Well, welcome everybody. We'll get started. So, what is the definition of an icon? Well, according to the Collins English Dictionary, it's any person or thing that is revered, or someone or something as embodying the essential characteristics of an era or a group. So some things that I think are iconic around our country are the Empire State Building, the Space Needle in Seattle, Mount Rushmore, Niagara Falls, the Transamerica Building in San Francisco. There have been a few icons that are known around the world that have been moved from their original location. One is the London Bridge, which is in Lake Havasu. The Liberty Bell has been moved. There are a lot of items that are iconic to those of us that grew up in Elmhurst. The Gloss Mausoleum is one. Many of you may remember the Ovaltine smokestack that you could see down the Prairie path that was over in Villa Park. There's the Niebuhr statue in Old Main at Elmhurst College, the Wilder Mansion, the old train depot by the Prairie path, the Elmhurst Chicago Stone Processing Plant, and I like to think that the world's largest drum that the Elmhurst Armpit Orchestra built is also a local icon. Now, there's some other local icons that have been moved in our area. One of them is the roof finial from the Cook County Courthouse that's by the Elmhurst History Museum. Also, the big rock that was in Salt Creek, just north of town. There's the globe that was outside of the Sears/Willis Tower that's now up on Industrial Drive. And Hill Cottage Tavern. It was moved several blocks, and of course that was a big feat. So I believe that this cupola behind us is also a local icon. Now, it stood more than 6 stories above the ground when it was on top of the old Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, so it was pretty hard to see the imperfections. Now that it's down on the ground, it's a little easier to see, but the crew that restored it did their best. It's an entirely steel structure coated in aluminum. There was a little bit of wood on it. The decorative trapezoids that you see here were wood. They were originally covered in aluminum. The ones we had to replace them with are actually made out of cedar. The main cupola structure, you may not realize this, it probably doesn't look like it because I'm so tall and big around, but it is 19 feet tall without the flagpole. The flag adds an additional 12 plus feet, so the top of that flagpole is more than 30 feet above the ground and can be seen from out here on Butterfield Road now as you cross Salt Creek. Now, back in the 1920s, a group of local leaders headed by Dr. Edward Marquardt decided that Elmhurst needed a hospital. The nearest full-service hospital was in Oak Park at the time. So it took them a few years to get it going, but on October 10th, 1926, the old Elmhurst Memorial, what became the old Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, was dedicated. It had a different name then, and it had changed names several times. On the day that the hospital was dedicated, they also received their first patient because a lady that was at the dedication fainted. So please, I know that the hospital president, Pamela Dunley's here today, but she doesn't need any more patients from somebody fainting today. So drink plenty of water. And then about 6 days after it was dedicated, the first person was born there. Her name was Elizabeth Newman, and more than 150,000 births took place at the old hospital campus. Now, I like to think that Elmhurst Hospital is the oldest hospital in Dupage County. The folks over at Edward might argue that they were founded in 1907, but it was really a tuberculosis sanatorium until 1955. So it didn't become a full-service hospital until 1955. So Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, by my definition, is the oldest hospital in Dupage County. The first building that was put up in 1926 did not include this historic cupola. In 1945, the hospital leaders got together and started to lay the groundwork to build a large addition on the hospital to expand it from, at the time, about 110 beds to nearly 190 beds. That addition was finished in 1948 and included this cupola. I want to read from a book that was written on the 60th anniversary of Elmhurst Hospital by Rita Coulter. And so that would have been 1986, if I did my math correct. The cupola of Elmhurst Memorial Hospital became a new landmark in eastern Dupage County as the addition was completed and dedicated at a ceremony in front of the new entrance on May 16, 1948. How many folks are here today that were born at Elmhurst Hospital? Quite a few. And if you're raising your hand and you're under the age of about 6 or 7, it might be at the new campus, but I don't see anybody that qualifies for that. So almost everybody here was born at that raised their hand was born at the old Elmhurst Memorial Hospital. Actually, everybody. Some of you may have been born before this cupola was put up. Want to mention that also some bollards were saved from the old hospital. They sit back here, and they were part of the 1948 edition. And the Elmhurst History Museum will be getting the proceeds of the sale of those bollards. They're $50 a piece. If you're interested, let one of us up here in the back rows or me know today, and we'll set you up with one. They clean up pretty nicely. You'll see a couple of them with flower pots on top of them over here, and they really look great. There's a lot of people to thank here today, and I want to start with somebody who's not here, Mayor Morley. He's out of town, and the City Council, and there are a number of City Council members here. And in particular, our two 7th Ward Aldermen, Mike Brennan and what's his name over here? There he is, Mark Mulliner. Yay, Mark. So we know that the city's been storing this for the last 5 years, and I want to thank Jim Grabowski, Mike Kopp, Howard Killian, Bruce DeBeal, a couple of folks from the History Museum who helped us with some of our fact-finding. That's the director of the Elmhurst History Museum, Dave Oberg, and Dan Lund, who got some really great facts for me, so thank you both. I want to also thank Kent Johnson at the city, who helped with some engineering, and trust me, we needed some help. In particular, though, Corey Tiberi, who runs the city garage over there, and I'm sure she's got a fancy title and I messed it up. Corey, you're back there. You and your crew did an outstanding job. I was told by manager Grabowski that Corey would probably load it in my truck the day I went over to look at it because she needed to get rid of it. And sure enough, she offered to load it in my pickup truck. It wouldn't fit, of course. But Corey, you and your crew did a great job out here delivering it, and it was no easy task. And in particular, I want to call out Rich Stenson, who I saw back there. Thank you, Rich. He was an animal inside that thing, climbing up there. It was kind of scary. He wasn't afraid at all, and there's a lot of rusty metal. I hope you got a tetanus shot, Rich. You got a good first name, too. Of course, I want to thank the bank's board and the Hammersmith family. You know, our mission is not just to serve our customers. That's a lot of our mission, but our mission is also to serve our community. And that makes us a little different than most of our competition. We don't just say it, we mean it. We do projects like this that may not make sense financially, but they certainly make sense for the betterment of our community. So thank you, CBE board. Okay, so this was a project over the last 4 or 5 weeks since the folks at the city brought it out here, that we had a volunteer crew of people that worked very, very hard, and the person who led that up was Mark Martinello from the bank. Mark, you did a yeoman's job. Thank you. Also want to call out one of our engineers and our head painter, Chris Thompson, if you'd wave. Alderman Mark Mulliner, who was one of our engineers and helped us with the flag. Scott Algram, another one of our engineers. We've got a lot of engineers. Don Whistler, who's here today to represent the Whistler family. Also his sister Denise and brother-in-law Jim Lucas, who are not here today. Their friend Steve Emilski. Steve, are you here? Steve's not here. Mary Ann Gorski from the board of the bank also helped. Dave Gall from the bank. Nancy Brook, and my father, Bill Reichert, one of the other engineers. So thank you all for all you did. It looks beautiful. I want to thank a couple of vendors, Don Myers for his crew at Vital Signs USA for the work they did on the sign. I don't think Bill Bedrosian's here. Are you from Bedrock Earthscapes that helped us with the garden last year? There is at least one representative of the Conservation Foundation, Jan Rail. Jan, if you want to wave to the crowd, thank you for all you did to help. And Scott Lamort, when you were with the Conservation Foundation, thank you for all you did to help with the Whistler Prairie Garden. A few other folks I want to thank, some of which are here. Diane McGinnis, thank you. You helped us get some facts as it related to Darrell's service on the Board of Governors at the hospital. Ken Ebel from Ebel's Ace Hardware here in Elmhurst, he was our paint consultant. He didn't actually paint, but he helped us with the right kind of paint to cover this. John Lamorghese from Martino Concrete. There are a few folks here from the hospital or the health system that I want to recognize. I mentioned earlier the president of Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, Pamela Dunley. Pam, give a wave. Thank you for being here. Susan Tyberski from the Hospital Foundation is here. Thank you for being here. Colin Dellau, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right. Colin, Community Relations from the hospital, and Dan Sullivan, you're here too. So thank you to those of you from the hospital that are here. This is really a fitting tribute to Darrell, and one other I want to mention too, Bill Von Stein, who was the director of the Elmhurst Memorial Hospital Foundation for many years and also served on Community Bank's board of directors for many years. He would be proud to see this here. He's since passed on. And then, of course, Darrell Whistler. We all know what a great person Darrell was, and a lot of us were here last year when we dedicated this prairie garden to Darrell's memory. But in particular, Darrell served on the hospital's board of governors for more than 25 years, and he served as that body's chair for more than 15 years. So he would really appreciate this, and he appreciated history like crazy. And this beautiful garden here, it looks different at every time of the year. A few months ago, it had black-eyed Susans in full force. Now you're seeing some other flowers come out, so it's really beautiful. There's butterflies, grasshoppers, and I had a gentleman tell me he ran into a skunk there the other night, but I think that's the city's mascot. There are a few of them. Just kidding, Jim Grabowski. Right now, I'd like to have Mr. Bill Shanklin, who's Sergeant at Arms of the Elmhurst American Legion post next door, present the flag and help Alderman Mark Mulliner raise the flag. Now I would invite Mr. John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I will start us. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Please be seated. So earlier I mentioned that many things are iconic, but I would also add that people are iconic. Cleopatra, Abraham Lincoln, Rosa Parks, Elvis Presley, all icons in their own right. We also have a few local icons that are going to say a few words. We'll have Mr. George Hammersmith, who represents the Hammersmith family and Community Bank of Elmhurst as its chair, say a few words. George?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out, and a little scary being compared to Cleopatra and things like that. Rich and I started talking about this, I think, back in June. It's amazing when you put Rich on a project how fast things happen, and I'm just thrilled that this is done and how well it went. They made it look easy. I watched from a distance. I wish I could have been here to help. Got to watch Mark on pictures up in the cherry picker and stuff. It looked like he was having way too much fun. So anyway, I'll give you a little bit of history for the family here. Besides making a lot of noise and dust over in the quarry, my family was involved with the hospital for many, many years. Actually, the first doctor in Elmhurst, Dr. George Heidemann, which is where the George name came from, he would be my great-great-grandfather, I believe. He was the first doctor for when it was still Cottage Hill, and for about 10 years. And it was actually his daughter, would be my great-great-grandmother, that she had a bout, I think, of appendicitis and had to be taken to Oak Park, did not survive. And I think that was sort of the impetus of we need to get a hospital here as the city started growing. My great-great-uncle, William Hammersmith, was one of the original board of directors. My grandfather, George Hammersmith, was on the board of the hospital since 1934 till 1983 at his time of his passing. I think he was head of the building committee when they put up this cupola. So quite a bit of history. And my only history really is that I was one of the 150,000 born there, also with my wonderful wife. Actually, their family was in Des Plaines, but she was still born at Elmhurst. My 3 siblings, and then my 3 of my 4 children were born there too. And that's sort of the end of the history lesson, but I will tell you one little bit of history for me. This was an early childhood memory. I was about 6 years old. I think my brother Bob was born at the hospital. And my dad, if any of you knew him, not exactly Mr. Mom. He was in charge of us kids, I guess, during the time my mom was in the hospital. He decided when he went to pick up Mom and my brother that it would be a good idea to leave a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old in the car and go in and get my mom, come back out. My sister Martha, who was 4 at the time, and I'm going to blame her since she's not here, we were screwing around in the car, and she hit something, and the car rolled into the middle of the street. I'm assuming it was Berto or whatever. So now we're, 3 little kids sitting in the middle of the street blocking traffic. Total panic on my part. I'm in trouble, I'm sure. So anyway, I vividly remember my dad coming out what seemed to be 5 or 6 hours later. I'm sure it was about 10 minutes. Look on his face like I'm going to die. Now, apparently this was before social services was invented, so we still got to live with my parents. But anyway, it all worked out okay. But it's nice. I guess that's my history. It's nice to be a part of this and just a wonderful part of this community. And again, thank you all. Next, with the more fun stuff, Honorable, I'm going to let you introduce.
Sure.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, George. There are a couple other folks that I didn't thank, the first of which that I want to introduce to you and say a few words is the Honorable Lee Daniels. Lee obviously is a local icon, legend in town, served in the Illinois House for more than 30 years and was one of only 2 people to serve as the Illinois House Speaker in the last 35 years. That's pretty significant. He currently runs the consulting firm that he founded that consults for government and community relations, Lee Daniels and Associates. Lee Daniels.
Thank you, Rich, and Chairman, thank you so much for your contribution and your family history. It's a great history, isn't it? And we need to learn and understand more about that, because this icon stands for the history of Elmhurst. And so many people here have such an integral part of this town and community that makes this the community that it is and that we love. Joe Herter is here today. Joe Herter served as chairman of the hospital board for years and helped found the new hospital that we enjoy today. So say thanks to Joe Herter for all of his great work. And when I look out and see so many people that led us in the hospital throughout the years, Dr. Dan Sullivan, who's the chief medical officer of Elmhurst Medical. And by the way, you want to be his friend because we all need a cardiologist once in a while. So every time I see him, I hug him and tell him how great he is. You might do the same, it's a good idea. But you know, when you look at this development and how it came about, it was because of the history that Chairman Hammersmith told us about. And each one of you that carries part of the history in your own life and your own experiences. We approached Nitty Development, and they're here today. Say hi to the Nitties. Thank you so much, right over here. Now, in case you don't know about this family, they developed the property and the houses and the old hospital, and what a great job they did. Those are beautiful homes, and you did a wonderful job. They gave us the cupola and allowed us to remove it from the old hospital. Well, we had a little problem because I talked to them and I said, how do we get it down? And they said, well, Lee, with all due respect, I have to get it down. And you find somebody. So who do we go to? McHugh Construction. Mike Maher is here from McHugh Construction. Brought cranes over and brought it down, put it on a flatbed truck. And now we had this flatbed truck. Now what do we do with this cupola? We thought we had put it in the center of town. Well, the mayor didn't really like that idea. We thought we would put it over in the new hospital. Well, there was problems there. How about the Park District? There was difficulty there. So the city put it in a garage. Now we ran a campaign like Ferris Bueller. Remember that movie, Save Ferris Bueller? This was Save the Cupola. We had Facebooks, we had videos, we had everything else, and we really had fun doing it. In fact, my office got involved in it. It was a lot of good times doing it. But we didn't succeed because it ended up at the Elmhurst garage and stood there for 4 or 5 years, which you know the history of it beyond that. But those people that have contributed to this led to the time when Rich Reichert and Chairman Hammersmith said, you know, we need to really save this. What better spot today than the Darrell Whistler Memorial Garden area because of Darrell's history with the bank and so forth. So we owe a great deal of thanks to the Nitty Development Company, great deal of thanks to Maher Construction. Mike, I just elevated you, Mike, to McHugh Construction, but it's yours anyhow. And of course to the city, the Park District, and of course the hospital. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Congratulations, Elmhurst. Treasure this moment. It is a moment of history that we can all respect and admire. Thank you.
Another person that I would like to recognize and have come say a few words is Lee's partner in crime, the Honorable Tom Marcucci. And Tom is the only person to serve the city of Elmhurst as mayor for 4 full terms, and currently helps lead his family-owned company, Ganella Baking Company, as part of the 3-person executive team. So, Tom Marcucci.
Well, thank you very much, Rich. It was indeed an honor for me to be asked to speak today. As was alluded to, Lee and I and several others in the community were deeply involved in attempting to save the cupola and finding a proper place for it in our community, somewhere where we could go to remember it, look at it, et cetera, and think about Darrell. So having been asked to speak today, I immediately asked Rich if I could have 40 minutes, you will recall. He said, well, no. I worked hard to kind of craft my remarks and cut them down because I had so many different ways to approach this. One is, first and foremost, to thank the Hammersmith family. This is just fabulous that you and your family stepped up and decided to make this garden, the Darrell Whistling, the home of the cupola, to which, as we all know, Darrell was very, very involved with and attached to the hospital, Elmhurst Memorial Hospital. And so it's such a wonderful fit. It just made such great sense to me when I first heard it, and I hope it makes the same sense to you guys. And so again, finishing my first approach to this, thank you, George, and your family for and this is just a little part of what the Hammersmith family has done for Elmhurst over the years, and so this really kind of puts a fine point on it for me, so thank you very, very much. The other one is my relationship to the Cupola, and some folks have heard this story, and it's kind of underwhelming, but I just thought I'd tell you that my first relationship or view of the Cupola was, imagine, it's about 1959, I'm like 8 years old, I'm living in a house in Brimhaven, which was a new subdivision at the time, we had no trees of any size, and I'm down the street playing with my buddy, Jimmy Grissetto, Dr. Grissetto, the dentist's son, they lived down the block, and we're up on the jungle gym in his backyard, and through the trees, we see the Cupola. Well, what is that? What is that thing over there? What is that? And given that we were 9 years old and it was Sputnik and the space race, we decided that it was Cape Canaveral. Even though we were looking north and Florida's to the south, we thought, well, wow, that's really a great thing. So that's how long I remember this icon of our community. And Jimmy Grissetto today, incidentally, interestingly enough, lives in Ireland, and so he couldn't be here today, but that was how far back I go with that. And the next I want to focus on Darrell Whistler. I think many of you have heard the term the butterfly effect, which has to do with how you make a little decision today and it has huge consequences in the future, deep into the future. Darrell, as you may know, is not a native to Elmhurst. He was born out in Kansas. He went to school out there. He was raised there. He's from Kansas. And he went to work for Sears, which is a Chicago-based company, and at some point in his career, pretty early on actually, he had an opportunity to come into Chicago and work at the corporate headquarters, and somehow we got lucky when he decided to choose Elmhurst to live in. And I didn't know him at the time, I didn't talk to him about it, and I never really had a full explanation of why Elmhurst, but think of the benefit that man brought to our community over a 30, 40-year time in our town. When I got to Elmhurst City Hall as a newbie mayor, I've often said how much Mr. Borchard helped me, but the end of that sentence is, and his folks, and his team, and the folks that were in City Hall when I got there. And Darrell was in City Hall when I got there. I'm a Kaiser Roll salesman. I knew almost nothing about planning and zoning. But Darrell took me under his wing, and by the way, if you don't know, when no one else was around, he called me Kid. How you doing, Kid? I was the mayor. He was calling me Kid. It was his way of getting close to me, and I returned that, and we took off on a wonderful 30-plus year relationship, where he brought me from knowing nothing about it. 6 years later, I'm on the Northern Illinois Planning Commission, NIPSI. How did that happen? Because Darrell took me under his wing, and we worked together. All that time, when I was mayor, 16 years, he was the head of our Planning and Zoning Commission. You should know that in all that time, I never had to tell him how to vote because we were absolutely simpatico all the time. And by the way, he never asked me. He just was not going to ask me. He was going to do it his own way, and I valued his contribution to our community right up to and through the last day I was there. He was in charge of that planning zone. By the way, the next day, after he'd be deciding some big thing, like the shopping center at Route 83 and St. Charles Road, and the next day he'd be on the corner at York Road and North Avenue with a Kiwanis vest on selling candy to raise money. This man was a full spectrum contributor to our community. So the city, the Kiwanis, the symphony, it goes on and on and on, and of course the hospital. His dedication to the hospital is not measured in years or meetings, it's measured in decades. Think about that. So this is an appropriate footnote or exclamation note, actually, to Darrell's contribution to the city of Elmhurst. He was my friend, he was our benefactor, and he was certainly a citizen of the city of Elmhurst, and for that I thank him, and we all should. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. After our ribbon cutting, I invite you to stick around for some refreshments out here in the parking lot and get to say hello to some of the folks that you don't get to see that often. I do one last time want to recognize the crew that helped on the restoration. So would you folks all please stand and give you a round of applause? So, you know, memories from our past make us all feel a little bit differently. And there's nothing that we can change about the past, but we can certainly remember it. We can certainly learn from it. We might laugh a bit. We might cry a bit. It might make us smile when we think of memories from the past. Most of us here have memories of this cupola when it sat high atop the old Elmhurst Memorial Hospital building. I remember as a little kid living only a few blocks from the hospital at the time, and my parents taking my brother and I over along 3rd Street to watch the Elmhurst Fire Department actually burn houses to the ground for practice to make way for some hospital expansion. So it was right in our neighborhood when I was very young, but I did grow up here and I have a lot of fond memories of it. Some of you here might be reminded of, you know, an illness or a death in your family that occurred at the hospital. Others might be reminded of trips to the emergency room, most of which turned out great, and you laugh about them afterwards. And many of us are reminded of the births that happened of loved ones and friends at the hospital. We all have our special memories that are triggered by symbols of the past, and this symbol is special to our community, and we encourage folks to come visit, enjoy the beautiful garden, and enjoy this little reminder of our history. Thank you. If I could ask John, we'll do a ribbon cutting up here.
Sure.
Get the Hammersmith family, all representatives of the Hammersmith family up front. Mr. Daniels, Mr. Marcucci, and board members of Community Bank and the officers of Community Bank. And then all you folks that worked on it also.